My topic is: should the undocumented parents of the U.S. citizen children be allowed to remain in the United States? Well, according to a research that I have made, I found that America's strength, it's not our diversity. It's our ability to unite common principles, even when we come from different backgrounds. According to the United States, there's an estimate of 5.3 million children that live with unauthorized immigrant parents. And from those, 85% of these children are U.S. born citizens. Immigration is one of the most stressful events a family can undergo. I chose this topic because it relates a lot to me. This topic relates to me because I have an undocumented mother. She has lived here for almost 2 decades. My siblings and I are U.S. born citizens. A short story of a life of a child with immigrant parents I'll be showing. This child has lived with his parents that are immigrants, and now he's facing deportation. This is how he lives immigration of parents that are unauthorized to be in the United States.
God make me an orphan. Have compassion.
The parents of these children have all been recently deported. They were in the U.S. illegally. Their American-born children were allowed to stay behind. 9-year-old Jason Garcia says he was asleep when his father was taken away and sent back to Guatemala.
He was trying to work, and the police took him, they reported him, and I missed him. I wish he could come back.
On the steps of the U.S. Supreme Court on Thursday, this extended family of activists called for a halt to divisive deportations.
We need the civil, human, and constitutional rights of the kids respect, and they have the power to do justice, and that is what we are here asking for.
Sandigo is no stranger to the cause. A well-known immigration rights activist in Florida, she is legal guardian to more than 900 so-called deportation orphans.
The government is destroying their homes, destroying their life, and destroying their future.
In recent weeks, the Obama administration has vowed to speed up the deportations, some say in an effort to fend off criticism during an election year. But legal activists argue the law of the land is being selectively enforced.
This government has said we're going to prioritize deporting criminal aliens. But in many cases, they haven't done that. They are deporting law-abiding citizens, other than the immigration violation, who are parents of U.S. citizen children. And we think that...
Today, my 3 points that I'll be touching are: first, the impacts of deportation of parents on children. Second, how U.S. children may end up in the child welfare system following the detention of their parents. Thirdly and lastly, how does this affect the children economically? My first point, as I addressed before, how does the impacts of the deportation of parents on children? The impact on deportation on children is highly affects the children. First of all, because children face many things. Children face depression, personal psychological distress, which increases because of the detention of their parents, or deportation of their parents. According to a study, a Latino citizen children from 2013 to 2015 found that post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms were higher for children who at least had one detained or both deported parents. Children change their behaviors, usually because they feel alone. They don't have nobody because their parents are being deported. Usually their behaviors change to more withdrawn, angry, aggressive. Most common symptoms a child can face. Most children cry or were afraid, more often because the impact of what they're living. They also change their eating habits, sleeping habits, because of the detention or deportation of their both parents. Children are impacted not only a little bit, but are highly affected because of the detention or deportation of their parents. Second point that I have is how U.S. citizens' children may end up in the child welfare system following the detention of their parents. Well, have you ever thought of if you end up in a child welfare system? Some of you have been there, not because your parents are deported, but because of some other personal reasons. Usually, immigrants are in a child welfare system because their parents are being deported. When a child is being deported, they go through a process. They usually are sent there because their case is being processed or because they are being deported. Usually when a child is in a child care fair system, they go there either or to find a adoption family, go to a relative, find a relative to go to, a friend, somebody else they trust on, usually. Deportation parents, and most of the time children go to foster homes. Foster care often leads to adoption of children, which this usually leads to the separation of parents, and the fight for the unification begins for them, usually because they're being separated and they probably won't be able to come back. Third point that I'll be touching is, lastly, how does this affect the children economically? Well, if one of the parents is being deported from the U.S., many families can face substantial economic disadvantages. Usually, children are at risk of economic instability. A family income, according to a research, it was conducted, and it stated that a family income will decrease 50% of following of the deportation of a family member. Families lose 40 to 80% of their income, or an average of 70% within 6 months of a parent's immigration-related arrest, detention, or deportation. Between 2003 and 2013, some 3.7 million U.S. immigrants have been deported, according to a research. And according to an estimate, 25% of these deportees has U.S. born citizens that are born here, and still their parents are being deported. Once a parent is deported, it's fair. I discussed my 3 main points. I discussed the impacts of deportation, the child welfare system, and the economic instability. Child depends on their parents for everything. To lose a parent is truly hard for them. Some of us, we have biological or not parents. I have believed that undocumented parents should remain in the United States. Have you ever thought of your parents being deported or staying alone in the United States? This is the hardest thing ever for a child. It's a nightmare, usually. I know that some of you support Donald Trump in building the wall between Mexico and the United States.